Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the Pandas data frame combine method. And this is a technique that allows us to evaluate two data frames and then apply some function as it relates to that evaluation of the two data frames. So first we'll look at the documentation, and then I'll demonstrate this with a couple of examples in our own Jupyter notebook. So here's the documentation shown on the screen where we have our data frame combine method, and you can see that it says performs a column-wise combine with another data frame. And one of the interesting steps is that it applies some function over those two series and then would return some scalar value at each point. A key note is that this will be the union of the two. So we want our column and row indices to be the same. But a couple of examples that they have shown here, and we'll build our own out, is that you can write your own function. So we've got data frame 1 and data frame 2. We've got some data. As you can see, we have the same row and column indices, and they're just taking the smaller of the sum of S1 compared to S2. And in the second case, you see we have DF1 compared to DF2. They're combined with DF2, and we're returning the minimum value of each of these cells. So the minimum value of 5 versus 1, etc. And so let's go to our notebook and look at a few examples. So here I'm importing pandas, and I have two data frames, one called baseline, the other called follow-up. And so I've got some sample patient data, for instance, and we are monitoring their blood pressure for 3 patients, and I can show you what baseline looks like. And we also have the follow-up, so perhaps they came in after some drug treatment or exercise, and we're just trying to monitor if there's any improvement in their blood pressure and, let's say, resting heart rate. And so let's take the two example approach, one where we're going to use a built-in NumPy function, and the other where we'll build our own function called compare. So the way this works is we can say baseline dot combine. And what we want to do is combine this with follow-up. And let's say for the sake of this study, we only care about the maximum value between each of these values. So the maximum value between patient 1 blood pressure, which is 120 versus 122, the maximum value would return 122. So let's just call np.maximum. And if we run this, you see we would get the highest value for each of these particular index locations. And so a really simple use case. But let's advance this a little bit more. Let's say we have a separate function where we actually want to return a different output through the evaluation of each of these combinations. So let's say x, which would be our first data frame, is equal to the value in the corresponding location in our second data frame. Let's return unchanged. If y, I'm going to read this a little bit backwards, is greater than x, we're going to say it's increased, otherwise decreased. So let's run this cell and then apply this into our combine method. And so if we run baseline again and dot combine, we will put in follow-up. And now we're going to have to make a small tweak for this because this is doing an element-wise comparison. We need this to be vectorized, so we're going to use np.vectorized. There's other ways. In the documentation, they actually use, the documentation here, they use a lambda function to get around this. As I've griped in multiple videos, I really don't like lambda functions. To me, they're still somewhat confusing. So this is just one workaround that I'll sometimes use. It doesn't work in every case, but in this case, it does. And so we're going to vectorize this function, and we're going to pass in compare. And when we do this, we will get this modified output where we can see if the patient's blood pressure and heart rate has either increased, decreased, or is unchanged. And so this is a good way to combine multiple data frames and gain some insight really quickly by building our own comparison functions. Of course, we could build this into chains. We can do much more with this. But in any case, I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.